Good afternoon, everybody. This is Sunday, November 29th, and I will be presenting to you lecture number 5 this afternoon. I just want to mention one thing that I think you should just keep in the back of your minds. I've been telling you that you will be taking a midterm exam, and that's going to be coming up soon. Okay, I think what we'll be doing is having one more lesson next Sunday, next Saturday or Sunday. I'll record it, lesson 5. And then I'm looking at sometime early the following week to do a midterm exam based on all of the lessons that we've done up to that point. We'll be about at the midpoint in the semester. So I remind you that you're doing these assignments not only because you have to, but also because by doing these assignments and taking notes on the lectures, you're preparing yourselves for the midterm exam and what eventually will be a final exam. I also want to emphasize you've got to check your emails, please. Okay, you should be checking them regularly. I sent one yesterday, just kind of updating you on the driving situation. So please make sure you are checking that if you haven't yet. And understand everything's day to day. And as you know, this crisis has put us in very unpredictable times. So I am definitely counting on your patience, and I keep assuring you that as far as driving is concerned, if things get postponed and put off one time after another, please don't worry. Okay, I guarantee you will get all the lessons that you're supposed to have. It's just the logistics of it isn't always very easy. But at least with the lecture class, we're right on target. So, if you're following along, you're completing the lecture component of the course on schedule. So today we want to talk about traffic control devices. And that's the topic for lecture 5. When we talk about traffic control devices, there are 3 categories that fall under that heading. Number 1, traffic signs. Number 2, signal lights. And number 3, pavement markings. So the 3 examples of traffic control devices, once again, are traffic signs, signal lights, and pavement markings. Now, when we think of those 3 things, we should understand what their purpose is. And the overall purpose of the traffic control devices is to ensure highway safety by providing for orderly and predictable movement of all traffic, motorized and non-motorized. I'll repeat that purpose. The purpose of traffic control devices is to ensure highway safety by providing for orderly and predictable movement of all traffic, motorized and non-motorized. Now, of course, when I talk about non-motorized, I'm talking about pedestrians, I'm talking about bicyclists. Okay, so these control devices don't only impact cars and motorcycles and buses, but they also impact people who are walking, they impact people on their bikes. Okay, so that's the umbrella under which everything falls under. The other thing I would mention in that purpose, and you've probably heard me say this before, when we use the term highway in these lectures, we're talking about the roadways in general. You and I, when we hear the word highway, we associate that with, the major roads where you do 60 miles an hour with 3 lanes. I think that's the definition that we kind of associate with that word highway. But in technical terms, unless I specify otherwise, if I'm saying highway, I'm talking about all of the roads, okay, the roads in general. Now, basically what these traffic control devices do to achieve their purpose is that they communicate, okay? So in order to have that orderly flow, we need those traffic control devices to communicate to the drivers and pedestrians effectively. And how do they do that? Well, they do that through 4 means. There are 4 ways in which these traffic control devices communicate with people on the road. Number one, they do it through color. Number two, shape. So if we're talking about signs, we're talking about the shape of the sign has significance. Number three, words. And number four, placement. So again, the communication modes for traffic control devices are four in total: color, shape, words, and placement, where these things are located. Okay? I want to start talking about colors first. And when we talk about colors, we're talking about predominantly signs, but also lights. Okay? And, the traffic signals are also in this category. And there are 10 colors that you should be familiar with that each have significance, okay, whether it's a sign or a traffic light. And I want to run through those 10 colors. Now, by the way, it's very possible, up to this point in your life, you've been a pedestrian or a passenger in a car. If you're like I was when I was your age, it's very possible that you never really gave any thought to a lot of these things. And many of you will see now signs, and you'll see a yellow sign and you'll say, oh, now I know why it's yellow, or why that one is blue, or why that one is shaped like an octagon, or whatever the case may be. This may be opening up, I hope it is, unless, again, you've already known this stuff, which is great if you did, but this may be opening up a whole world to you. When you're in your driver's ed car driving with your instructor, you're now going to be sensitive to the things that you may not have paid any attention to before, okay? So there are 10 colors that have significance. We start with the color yellow. Yellow is in the category of general warning or caution, okay? So yellow is general warning or caution. Number two is fluorescent yellow. Green, fluorescent yellow green, is warning, okay? And again, I'll repeat these if you need me to. Number three, orange is a temporary work zone, okay? So there's construction going on. Number four, green is directional guidance. It also indicates that movement is permitted, like a green light. Number five, brown. Brown is indicative of recreational and cultural interest guidance. So a sign that's brown might be pointing out a national landmark. It might be pointing out a park, a campsite, things of that nature. Number six is blue. Blue is motorist services. So if you are looking for a restaurant or gasoline station or hospital, any of those things, signs would be blue. Number seven, red is stop or prohibition, a red light, of course, but a red sign also is telling you that you can't do something, prohibits you from doing something, just as a red light prohibits you from going, okay? Numbers 8 and 9 are black and white, and they're in the same category. They would be regulatory information. Regulatory information. So they regulate what you can and cannot do. So they may be indicating, for instance, times when you can park in a certain area. Or they may indicate a lane that you can use at certain times of day. That's what we mean by regulatory. They tell you what you can and cannot do. Those signs are black and white. And finally, number 10, fluorescent pink. Fluorescent pink would be incident management. So it's similar to orange in that there's construction, a temporary work zone. But fluorescent pink is, in particular, there's something that just happened. Okay, there's an incident that has happened very recently, maybe an accident or some kind of situation where, a tree branch fell in a storm or whatever, and you see the fluorescent pink sign that gives you information, okay? I'll run through these quickly one more time. Yellow is general warning or caution. Fluorescent yellow green is warning, like yellow, okay? Number 3, orange is a temporary work zone. Number 4, green is directional guidance and indicates that movement is permitted. Number 5, brown is recreational and cultural interest guidance. Number 6, blue, is motorist services guidance. Number 7, red, stop or prohibition. Numbers 8 and 9, black and white, regulatory information. And number 10, fluorescent pink, is incident management. Okay, so those are the importance of colors. Okay, and in addition to colors, and that we also have shapes, and I'm going to point out a few of those. And we also have symbols. I may point out a few of those as well. Okay, let's talk about specifically signs. There are 3 types of signs that you should be aware of. Number 1 is regulatory. And number 2 is warning. And number 3 is guide. So the 3 types of signs: regulatory, warning, guide. Okay? We start with regulatory. As I mentioned before, regulatory signs tell drivers what they may or may not do. Okay? And they can be they could be of several different colors. They could be either, red, or they could be black and white. Those would fall in the category of regulatory. They inform drivers of laws that apply at a given time or place. They tell drivers what they can or cannot do. The most common example of a regulatory sign is a stop sign. We all know what that is, okay? It's an 8-sided sign, so you should know that when you see a stop sign, pay attention to the fact that it has 8 sides. It's shaped like an octagon. And the colors are red and white. And of course, it tells the driver to come to a complete stop. Now, in your driver's ed cars, I'm sure your instructors are talking to you about stop signs, because a lot of us, myself included, we don't always do what we're supposed to do at stop signs. You're supposed to stop behind the sign, okay? If there's a crosswalk, it's behind the line. If there's no crosswalk, you're behind the sign. You don't roll through it. You do your first stop, then you roll through, and always do a second stop, unless it's an all-way stop sign. You're going to see them. If you see a stop sign and it says underneath all way, that means all 4 corners have a stop sign. And you come to a complete stop at the sign, and whoever gets there first just goes after your first stop, okay? And your instructors are going to go over that with you in the car. We also have yield signs. Yield signs are shaped like triangles and inverted triangles, okay? So what would be the base of the triangle is at the top, and the other 2 segments cross on the bottom, okay? And they too are red and white. They have a red border, okay, with a white background. A yield sign requires you to give up the right of way to somebody else. So whether it's a lane that's merging into another lane, or an intersection of some sort where there's going to be traffic coming from either your right or your left, the yield sign is telling you that you have to make sure that any traffic that is coming in that direction, you're letting them go before you go. You don't have to come to a complete stop at a yield sign. You may have to. If you're approaching the yield sign and there's traffic and you can't find an opening, then you will have to stop. But if you don't have to stop, that's fine. If you slow down, make sure nobody's coming, nobody's there, you just go. Or if you slow down and let the person go, and then you go. Okay? We also have regulatory signs that are known as do not enter signs. And they typically are red circles. You'll see the sign. They are, the sign itself is square. And then you have a red circle with a red line through whatever it is that you're not supposed to do. Okay, so you'll see a symbol. Let's say it's no crossing. You'll see people crossing. Okay, and then you'll see the circle and the line that tells you no crossing. Okay, so it basically prohibits any kind of travel, whether it's pedestrian or traffic. It prohibits travel in certain sections of roadway. A common example is trucks. So for instance, if you're riding on the Bell Parkway, trucks are not allowed on the Bell Parkway. So you would see a sign with the circle and a line through it, And that line is through a picture of a truck. Okay, and it just reminds truck drivers that trucks are not allowed on that roadway. Some other regulatory signs. Most regulatory signs are rectangular. You know, we talked about the stop sign, the yield sign, and the do not enter sign. But the majority of the other regulatory signs are rectangular, and they're vertical rectangle. Okay? And some of the things that regulatory signs tell you, they give you turning restrictions. So they tell you where you can't make a turn, a right turn or a left. They indicate lane use, okay, what lanes you can use and what you can't. For instance, there's such a thing called the HUV lane, which you can only use certain times of day when you have a certain number of people in your car, okay? They give you speed limits. They give you, they also give information to pedestrians when they can cross, where they can and cannot. They also indicate parking controls, where you can and cannot park, times of day that you may be able to park and others that you can't, all right? And as we said before, the circle is one of the most common, where it has the red circle with the line through it, tells you what you can't do. Okay, let's go to warning signs. Now, we already know that warning signs are typically yellow, okay? And basically what they do is they warn drivers of specific road, environment, and traffic conditions a short distance ahead. They warn you of what's coming up. I'll repeat that. The main things they're warning you of are either specific road conditions, specific environmental conditions, or specific traffic conditions a short distance ahead. Okay? There are two exceptions to the yellow color, and we mentioned this before in the category of warning signs. One, we said, is a construction zone where the warning sign is not yellow, it's orange. And the other, we said, is pedestrian signs, which typically are not yellow, but fluorescent yellow-green. Other than those two, you're typically, the majority, if not, all of the warning signs other than those two are going to be yellow, all right? Yellow warning signs are typically diamond shaped, okay? And you're always reading them from the bottom up. So if there's a diagram, let's say it's showing you that the road is going to curve a certain way. So you see that curve, you see that symbol. You look from the bottom up, and what's on the bottom is what's coming up first, okay? So you always read those symbols from the bottom up, all right? You will see warning signs at intersections. They warn you of an intersection coming up. Changes in lane width, okay, or lanes closing out. This lane is going to end soon, so you have to move over to the other lane. Crossing for pedestrians, as we said. Curves, they will warn you of that, okay? You'll also see merge signs telling you, usually what you see is a straight black line and you see a road go like that. It's telling you that there's a merge coming up, okay? Those are some examples of the kinds of warning signs that you will see, okay? And some other warning signs, just to kind of give you examples. Railroad signs, railroad crossing is warning, okay? We don't see that so much in New York, at least not in the city. Pedestrian signs, and again, those are the ones that are fluorescent green usually, okay? They may indicate school zones. No passing zone. There's something called a chevron alignment sign. And you'll see it if you haven't paid attention to it before. It's like an arrow. It's a yellow sign with a black arrow. And it tells you basically that the road is going to be curving up ahead. That's called chevron, Chevron, okay? A temporary work zone, which we said, is again, it's typically pink or orange if it's construction, and a slow-moving vehicle sign. Okay, those are just some other examples of warning signs. All right. Guide signs, several shapes and colors. Okay, they provide information about routes, exits, distances. So, if you're on the highway and you see a sign's telling you a mile to, Manhattan, that's a guide sign. And it's typically, your guide signs are typically green and white, but they could be other colors as well. Okay. They may tell you where an exit is. They may tell you how far something is. They also may give you routes. Okay. The blue and the brown signs are also guide signs. If you remember, we mentioned before, blue gives you road services, hospital, restaurants, etc. Okay. And brown is typically recreational sites, campsites, or places of historical significance. Those are examples of guide signs. Now, what I want you to do, you won't have to do this for this week's assignment, but one of the things I'd like you to do prior to your midterm is, if you go online and you go to the DMV website, for instance, you will see study guides there, where you'll see many examples, that I can't show you in this context, but you'll see many examples of the different kinds of signs that I'm talking about here. Okay. Or if you're practicing for your permit test and you're taking practice tests, you'll see many questions about signs. All right. I would, if I were you, look at as many of them as you can, not only for your permit test, but for your midterm, because, if you see some examples, and again, I'm not going to test you on every single specific sign, but you should be able to recognize whether a sign is, regulatory, whether it's warning, whether it's a guide sign. You should be able to understand what the color and shape indicates, okay? Look at a lot of those signs. The more you look at, the more familiar you become with this particular unit, okay? All right, let's talk about now route numbering. So when we talk about guide signs, we talk about also routes, and they're kind of a sign in, their own, they have their sort of own category, all right? They're typically shaped like a shield, like a badge. So it comes down like this, and there are little ridges on the top. You see them in New Jersey a lot. There's a lot of routes there. Route 9, Route 1, whatever it might be, okay? So a route numbering sign is shaped like a shield, like a badge, and it's blue on the bottom with a red band across the top. So it's got a white background, blue on the bottom, and a red band on top, okay? And when we talk about routes, we talk about numbers. Every route has a number, okay? And that number is either a single or double digit. In some cases, you'll see a 3-digit route number, all right? But it's a number. And you should know that if that number is even, that route runs east to west or west to east, okay? It's an east-west route. If it's odd, it's a north-south route, okay? Routes typically connect highways. They connect one highway to another. They take you off the highway and they bring you into areas that might be more residential. Again, you don't really see them in Staten Island or New York City in general, but when you go into other places like New Jersey, or if you go upstate, or you go into even maybe Long Island, you're going to see route signs that are shaped like that shield, okay? If a route sign is even numbered, that means it tells you east or west. If it's odd numbered, it tells you north or south. And I mean, if you forgot that as a driver, it's no big deal, because they are going to say on the route sign north or south, so you'll know, but you should, again, you probably never paid attention to it before, but you should know that even odd thing, okay? All right, we're going to move to traffic signals. And a traffic signal indicates, basically the main purpose is that it indicates who has the right of way. And again, when we talk about right of way, and that's a term we're going to come back to, but right of way basically is who is entitled to go first. And you as a driver have to know right of way laws, because a right of way can only happen if you surrender it. So if you know somebody, if you have a stop sign and somebody else cutting across doesn't, you have to know that car coming is entitled to go first before you could go. Okay? So you give up that right of way to that car. All right? The three most basic traffic signals are, when you're driving, the red, yellow, and green. And let's talk about them a bit. Let's start with the red light. Of course, we all know from the time we're very little that red means stop, okay? And that's prior to usually a crosswalk or a roadway edge. Come to a complete stop right at the crosswalk, okay? Now, yellow can be a little tricky, and let me talk about that. Yellow, by definition, means that the right of way, your right of way, is about to expire. So when it's yellow, you know that it's about to go to red soon, okay? It was just green where you had the right of way. Now it's moved to yellow, meaning that it's going to change to red soon, and then it's going to go to red. And there's, sometimes there's some trickiness on the yellow light, and let me just talk about a couple of aspects of it. We know, again, from the time you were a little kid, you probably knew that yellow means to slow down, right? And it means slow down and prepare to stop, because the light's about to change to red. But I'm going to add something to that you may not have given much thought to. Yellow means slow down and prepare to stop if it's safe to do so. There are times, and you may see this in your driver's ed car, you may have seen it with your parents. There are times where it's yellow and you go right through it. Okay? You don't want to speed up, which a lot of us do, and we shouldn't. You don't want to speed up to get through the yellow. But let's suppose you're driving your speed limit and you're just approaching, your light is green as you're approaching it, just approaching the intersection, and the light turns to yellow. It's better that you maintain your speed and you go through it than for you to stop short, to stop abruptly, and to risk having a car behind you hit you. So there are times where it's safer to go through the yellow than to slow down and come to a complete stop, okay? Sometimes it's tricky, and even after all the years of driving, sometimes I get caught. You get caught up in the middle. But the idea, the general rule is you don't speed up to get through yellow. But when you see yellow, goes yellow, presuming you have enough time to make a smooth stop right where the light is when it gets to red, then you slow down and you stop. But if you're just approaching that intersection and the light is almost just above you and you see that it goes to yellow, it's safer for you to go through, okay? And then we get to green. Green means go, of course. But I'm going to add something to that as well. Green means go when it's safe to do so. And you have to understand, when you have a green light, anybody that's in the crosswalk has the right of way, okay? You have to let them clear your path before you go, obviously. You're not going to run them over, right? So even though it's green, it's not safe to go yet. The other thing about green that is important that you understand is that anything that's in the crosswalk, anything that's in the intersection, any cars that may be in the intersection, suppose a car is just passing you and your light went green and he went through his green light or his yellow light, you have to wait for him to clear the intersection. So anything in the intersection has the right of way. That's why when you make a left turn, for instance, let's suppose you're in two lanes of traffic, both going in opposite directions, and you're making a left turn. You have the green light. The cars coming the other way have the green light. You wait for the oncoming traffic, right? So now your light above you is going from green to yellow, and it's going to red. You're in the middle of the intersection. The oncoming traffic has now stopped because they got the red light. But the cars coming this way, they have a green light. Okay? They're supposed to wait for you to make your turn, to clear the intersection before they go. So the general idea is that anything that's in the intersection Anybody that's in the crosswalk has the right of way when there is a green light for cars at the intersection. So green means to go when it's safe to do so. Yellow means to slow down and prepare to stop if it's safe to do so. And of course, red means stop right at the line or the crosswalk. Okay? And the sequence follows green, yellow, red, and then back to green. Green, yellow, red, and back to green. Now, pretty much in New York, our traffic signal lights are vertical, right? So green on the bottom, yellow in the middle, and red on the top. But if you leave New York, there are states, many states, where if you're driving and you're from New York, you may not be used to this, but there are many states where you will see the traffic lights go left to right. Okay? And just for your own reference, when it's the three lights horizontal rather than vertical, the red is on the left, your yellow's in the middle, your green is on the right. Red, yellow, green when it's horizontal. When it's vertical, green, yellow, red, bottom to top. Okay? Some additional signals that you should be familiar with. Flashing red. The best way to sum up what a flashing red light is just to make it analogous to what a stop sign is. Okay, a flashing red light means you have to stop and you have to give up the right of way to anybody who's coming. So basically a flashing red light is pretty much like a stop sign, okay? A flashing yellow light is very similar to what we would define as a yield sign. You slow down, you proceed with caution, you prepare to stop if you have to, and cars coming the other way would have the right of way. Okay, so you give them the right of way. Flashing yellow. You don't have to come to a complete stop at a flashing yellow if it's not necessary, though sometimes it may be. Okay? And then we have the arrows. The red arrow, green arrow, yellow arrow, and those are the turn signals. And you see some of these on Highland Boulevard. You'll see these in Staten Island. If I'm making a left turn, there's a left turn lane perhaps. I go into the left turn lane, and now I see that the traffic signal is an arrow pointing to the left. I have to follow that arrow in order to make my left turn. So if that arrow is red, I sit and wait. Don't worry about what the cars on your right are doing, okay? You're in the left turn lane. You're making a left turn. You follow the arrow. Same thing as if it were an arrow pointed to the right and you're making a right turn. You follow the arrow, okay? If the arrow goes green, make your turn. In other words, you know how with a left turn you wait for oncoming traffic, right? But if you have the arrow and it's green, you don't have to wait for that oncoming traffic. They're stopped. The green is telling you you're clear to make your turn. Again, as long as there's nobody in the intersection, there are no pedestrians, okay? But the oncoming traffic is supposed to stop and you're ready to go, okay? Okay, so those are traffic signals, some basic stuff, I think. Then, of course, we have pedestrian signals. And many times, and we see this pretty much all over in Staten Island, you see, you're waiting to cross the street and you see the countdown of the numbers, okay, telling you how many seconds you have before it's going to go to don't walk, okay? When I was a kid, pretty much all of the pedestrian walks and don't walk signals were the actual letters, so you'd have the green walk. And then instead of the countdown to when it's going to go to red, it would flash don't walk a number of times, and then it would go strictly to don't walk. If you're in the middle of the intersection when it goes don't walk, you have the right of way. Cars are supposed to wait for you to clear the crosswalk, okay? Today they have the symbols, right? Usually it's the red hand, okay? You may get the numbers counting down. You may get the flashing hand, all right? But today it's predominantly the symbols and not the words, all right? Pavement markings. Now, there are two primary colors that you need to be familiar with when it comes to, and I'm talking about lines in the street, when it comes to those lines, the colors are either yellow or white, okay? And there are two types of lines, either solid or broken. So I'm going to give you an example. Highland Boulevard. We're all very familiar with Highland Boulevard. On Highland Boulevard, you've got two lanes going in one direction and you've got two lanes going in the other direction, right? The next time you're on Highland, you're going to notice that the two lanes going in one direction are separated by a broken white line. You're going to notice that the two lanes going this way are separated from the two lanes going the other way by two solid yellow lines. So here are some simple rules of the lines. Number one, white indicates traffic going in the same direction. Yellow indicates traffic going in opposite directions. Second rule, solid, whether it's white solid or yellow solid, means you cannot cross the line to change lanes, okay, or to pass. Cannot cross that solid line. A broken line, you can cross, okay? So for instance, back to Highland Boulevard, you're going in one direction, there's a broken white line. That means two lanes are going in the same direction because it's white. And it's broken means if you, as long as it's safe to do so, if you want to change lanes, you can, okay? Sometimes you will see, and on Highland you don't have this. In Highland, in the middle of those four lanes, you have the two solid yellow lines, meaning that you can't cross on either side. You can't cross the yellow. Sometimes you would see a solid, let's say on one side it's a solid yellow line, and on the other side it's a broken yellow line, okay? What that means is if I'm driving on this side, just to my left is the broken yellow line. That means that if I need to pass somebody, because it's broken, I could cross over and pass them. But if I'm on this side coming this way and I need to pass somebody, I can't because it's a solid line. Now, because it's yellow, it's two-way. So you have to obviously be very careful, especially careful if you're passing somebody, because now what you're doing is you're crossing a bit into traffic that's coming the other way. So you have to be very careful. Okay, but you can't go wrong if you remember the basic concepts of lines of pavement markings. And the basic concepts are, once again, the colors, yellow and white. Yellow lines indicate traffic going in two directions, okay? White indicates traffic going in the same direction, okay? Solid, whether it's yellow solid or white solid, means you cannot pass. You cannot cross the line. Broken, whether it's white broken or yellow broken, means you can cross the line if you're changing lanes or passing. Okay? So that pretty much sums it up. I mean, and again, if you remember that, you can't go wrong. All right, today's lecture is pretty much over. I mean, it's a little shorter than we've been doing, so I'm sure you're happy about that. I am. And basically, before I end, just to remind you that at some point before your midterm, or before your permit test, if you haven't taken it yet, you certainly want to do practice questions. If you go to the DMV website, you can see them there. And the one thing you really want to look at are different examples of signs, because there's a ton of them. But again, if you know the basic color schemes and you know the basic shapes and rules that we talked about today, you should be able to figure out what a given sign is, but the more of those you see, I think the better off as a driver you're going to be, okay? All right, so later today, you're going to receive an email from me with the link to the video, and you'll also see the assignment attached. Okay, everybody, thank you. I hope you had a nice Thanksgiving. I'm looking to get back to school. I'm hoping the week of December 7th. So I'm looking forward to seeing you guys soon. Thank you.